Today I'm going to show you how to get Sega Saturn up and running in Retroarch. This one is actually really fun to use. Sega Saturn has quickly become one of my more favorite systems in the last couple years. I never had one growing up. Honestly, really never knew it existed until much later, just because the whole generation was dominated, in America at least, by the whole N64 versus PlayStation. So going back and exploring the Saturn has been really fun, really underrated system in my opinion. So let's get started. So first thing we're gonna do, of course, is open up Retroarch. So let's go ahead and get that opened up and go down to Online Updater, Core Updater, and we're gonna scroll down to the Sega section down here. And whoa, here we go. So we are going to download Beetle Saturn. I prefer this one over Yaba Oos just because it just runs a little bit better in all of my experience. So that's the one we're going to use. So just go ahead and get that downloaded again, and then go ahead and quit out of Retroarch. So next thing we're going to do is open up our web browser. We are going to go to retroarch.com, go to the good old docs page for users, core documentation, and Sega cores. So we're going to scroll down to Beetle Saturn so we know what files we need to make this guy run. So as we scroll down here, we can see that the required BIOS file is mpr17933.bin. Again, I am not going to be providing these files. That is up for you all to find on your own. So just depending on how you want to use Sega Saturn, what games you want to play, you will need a couple of optional files as well. So mpr17933.bin is our main required file for US and European games. If you want to do Japanese games, you also need the Sega_101.bin file as well. So go ahead and find those, and once you find them, go ahead and open up your system folder in Retroarch and copy those files right on over, and you are good to go. So now we can go ahead and open Retroarch back up and go ahead and load a game. And there you have it. That is very quick and easy to get set up and just get started playing on your Sega Saturn games.
Construction complete. New construction option. Building.
Now, of course, that's not all there is to the Sega Saturn core, of course. So if we go down to our core options, we can see that there are a ton of different options. So if you want to play games that required like the 4 meg expansions, this is where you would select those. So since I don't have those expansion files, like these wouldn't work, but you can also do the extended RAM, backup memory and all that, but I'm pretty sure that these two do require those extra cartridge files that I don't currently have myself. You could do 6-player adapters for sports games. You can set the sensitivity for your circle pad controller type if you are playing games like Nights into Dreams. Set mouse sensitivity. Then of course CD image cache. And then one of the last options you can set is if you're going to include some horizontal blur. This helps with transparency effects on some games. I haven't really played too many games on the Sega Saturn core to really notice needing it for anything, so I just leave it to off personally. But if you want to experiment with it and see what it does for your games, you can go ahead and do so. It does obviously blur the image quite a bit, but some games do require it to help with graphical effects. Now, of course, one last thing I'm going to show you, of course, is the shaders, because honestly, the greatest thing that you can do with these emulators is make them look really, really crisp, really, really retro. Like, no matter how you want it to look, you can use a shader to make it look that way. So for me, anything less than Gen 6, I prefer to have looking as accurately as possible to the real experience. So I just really like to throw scan lines and make it look like a CRT in here. Like that's just something I really prefer, and I really like it. So of course my favorite CRT filter is just to use easy mode. Makes it look really good, and it does not take a lot of effort. So you just load it up and you're good to go, and it looks really good. Like it looks like my Trinitron. Like it looks really good.
Unit ready. Building.
And so there we go. There is
Building.
your Sega Saturn looking like it's played on a really good high-end CRT. Alright, so one of the last things I want to cover when it comes to the Sega Saturn core is the controls tab. So I realized that I've forgotten to go over this in a couple of the previous emulators. The only really important one to discuss it on was going to be the PlayStation emulator. But in the controls tab, you can actually set what controller you're using. So of course most Sega Saturn games are just going to use the standard control pad. That's your 6 face button, 2 shoulder button controller. But then for games like Nights into Dreams, you want to use the 3D control pads. That way you can use an analog stick for better controls. And then you also have your arcade racing wheel if you happen to have PC equipment that can use that. And then of course the mission stick for really, really in-depth stuff. But there's also mouse, the light guns, twin stick. I don't know what games use the twin stick personally. I kind of need to do a little bit more research into Saturn games. Again, I've only had a Saturn a little bit of time, so I haven't gotten to explore the full functionality of most of its peripherals, unfortunately. Virtual gun, dual mission sticks, like so many cool things. So just make sure you get those options set correctly, because if you're using a game that doesn't use the 3D control pad, your game will not respond to your inputs because it thinks it's going to be a 3D control pad. So as you can see, I can no longer control the game, even though like the face buttons and all that you would think would work. So I set it back to control pad, and all of a sudden I can move again. So if you start up a game and wonder why you can't move, make sure that you're on the right controller. Once you have everything set up exactly how you want it, always make sure to go down and save that core override, so that way whenever you load the Sega Saturn core, everything is going to load up exactly as you have it now, so that way you don't lose out on anything. So as you saw from our last emulation tutorial where we were doing PlayStation Portable, I can load up the PlayStation Portable emulator, and it's got everything set up exactly how I want it. And now if I wanted to, I can go directly back into our Sega Saturn and have everything be exactly perfect as well. And there you have it. That is a step for step how you get Sega Saturn games up and running on Retroarch. And again, the Beetle core runs really well. I've not encountered a single issue with any games that I've thrown at it yet. Of course, I admit that's not a whole lot of games, since I don't own very many Sega Saturn games at the moment. So leave a comment below discussing some of your favorite Sega Saturn memories. I'd love to hear them, because again, I barely picked up a Sega Saturn about a year ago, so I really missed it in its heyday. So I would just love to hear from some of you that actually owned a Saturn during that time period. So thank you so much everyone for watching these videos. Thank you again for all of your continued support of the channel. You guys are fantastic. Make sure if you haven't already, hit that sub button, like, dislike button, just depending on how much you like this video, and have a wonderful day until we see you next time.